Circle Youth, it's Bailey. Last week, we kicked things off by talking a little bit about cancel culture and how social media can sometimes be a pretty ugly and angry place. But social media can also be a pretty wholesome and entertaining place, like when grandparents or old people use social media. I love seeing old people post weird stuff on the internet, but I wouldn't mind spending a little less time being their own personal tech support. Does anyone have a family member who is a little confused about how the internet works? Have you ever had to help them solve a technology problem? Or maybe you tried to explain to your parents or your grandparents what TikTok or a meme was? I'm sure you're happy to help your grandparents, aunts, uncles, or parents figure out their technology questions. Well, the first 50 questions anyway. But after that, I'd understand if you started to lose your patience. It's easy to get frustrated, especially with family, when someone needs help doing something that seems super easy and basic to us. I'm sure there are times you want to tell Aunt Edna to just look it up on YouTube, but then you might have to explain YouTube to her too. Every day, we face opportunities to help others in small ways, whether it's showing your grandma how to use emojis, or helping a kid tie their shoe, or holding the door open for someone whose hands are full. Depending on the person, the need, your mood, and how busy you are, maybe you help them, or maybe you don't. Everyone is helpful and generous sometimes, but what about the times we'd rather not be helpful? When we're too busy, annoyed, tired, or sure someone else will help if we don't? Here's the first question to get things started in your groups this week. Have you ever had to give or ask for help for something really obvious, easy, or funny? What was it? Talk about it for a few minutes in your group. Hopefully you can come up with some pretty good stories. Every day, we're surrounded by people who need help with things that are a lot more serious than figuring out how to post a picture on Facebook. Here's a video for us to watch together. Take a look.
CircleYXE.
Άκαχλος χορό. Τι πετυρά.
Dura Tayyip Antara.
Mura birat amiswad. Sa ċuċkani romazzja. Netzkena. Glawi. Tadi snume una voda.
Before we move on from here, I want you to talk in your groups about this question. When you watched the video of the little girl who needed help, what did you notice, think, or feel? I don't know what you thought or felt when you watched that video. Maybe you thought about a time when you failed to help someone in need. Maybe you remembered a time when you needed help, but no one was there for you. Maybe you did both. When we're in need, we're at our most vulnerable. But unfortunately, we don't always respond with compassion, care, or concern when we see someone else in need. Instead, we respond with impatience, discomfort, disgust, or suspicion. The reality is that sometimes we'll be the ones who are able to help, and sometimes we'll be the ones in need. Knowing that, wouldn't you like to live in a world where we all cared for each other when we're at our most vulnerable? I would. I believe that kind of world is possible, and that Jesus is challenging us to go out and create it. Now, I'm going to read from the Bible again this week. This is in the chapter Mark, which is one of the 4 Gospels. Now, these are the first 4 books of the New Testament, and they tell us stories about Jesus' life. And in those books, we find examples of Jesus meeting the needs of the people around him, the people that are vulnerable. Jesus' days were often interrupted by people's cries for help, like the time a blind man named Bartimaeus shouted at him while he was walking down the road. Here, I'm going to read it to you guys. It's Mark chapter 10. Then they came to Jericho. As Jesus and his disciples, which was like his crew, his close followers, came together with a large crowd, they were leaving the city, and then a blind man, Bartimaeus, was sitting by the roadside begging. When he heard that it was Jesus, he began to shout, "Jesus, Jesus, have mercy on me." And many of the people in the crowd started yelling at him and getting angry, and they told him to be quiet. But he kept on shouting all the more, "Son of David," that's Jesus, by the way, "have mercy on me." Jesus stopped and said, "Call him." So they called to the blind man. They said, "Cheer up, on your feet, he's calling you." Throwing his cloak aside, he jumped up on his feet and he came to Jesus. "What do you want me to do for you?" Jesus asked him. And the blind man said, "Teacher, I want to see." "Go," said Jesus. "Your faith has healed you." And immediately he received his sight and followed Jesus along the road. Does this story remind you of the video that we watched before? Bartimaeus pleaded for help, but he was told to be quiet. The crowds couldn't be bothered. To them, he was just another beggar, not worthy of their help or attention. But to Jesus, Bartimaeus was worthy of his time, his attention, and his help. Now, I've got another story, again, from the Bible and from a gospel, different one this time. This is in the Gospel of Luke, and it's in Luke chapter 8. Now, this was another day, and Jesus was busy again. He was on his way to save the life of a dying girl when he was interrupted by someone who needed his help. So, again, I'm going to read and summarize for you. So, Jesus was on his way, and the crowds almost crushed him. So, there was a lot of people, obviously. And a woman was there who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years. That's a long time. But no one could heal her. So she came up behind him and touched the edge of his cloak, and immediately her bleeding stopped. "Who touched me?" Jesus asked. And when they all denied it, Peter said, "Master, the people are crowding and they're all pressed against you. How would we know who touched you?" Jesus said, "Someone touched me. I know that power has gone out from me." And then the woman, seeing that she couldn't go unnoticed, came trembling before Jesus and fell at his feet. She told everyone there why she had touched him and how she had been instantly healed. And then Jesus said to her, "Daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace." Wow. Because of her gender and illness, this woman would not have been seen as someone worthy of Jesus' time or attention. She most likely believed this too herself, and that's why she didn't try to speak to Jesus, but simply reached out to touch the edge of his robe instead. After all, Jesus was an important man, and she wasn't. But to Jesus, she was worthy of his time, his attention, and his help. He spoke to her, and he called her daughter, and met her needs with love. Through his example and his teachings, Jesus consistently cared for people who had been canceled, forgotten, disrespected, and ignored because of their needs. And now he challenges you to do the same, to love people who are in need. When we study the actions and the teachings of Jesus, here are a few things we can learn about how to meet the needs of others and how not to. It's not only about our actions, it's about our hearts. Jesus doesn't challenge us to only act concerned about others or to put on a big show of meeting other people's needs. Jesus doesn't only care about what we do. He cares about what's happening inside our hearts and our minds too. It's not only about loving others, it's about loving God. Jesus challenges us to love others, well, yeah, but he's letting us in on a secret. When we love others by meeting their needs, we show our love for God and Jesus. Every time we care for someone who is vulnerable, it's a gift of love to God too. It's not about what we have, it's about what we can give. As we've talked about meeting the needs of others, maybe you've thought, I can't help anyone, my family doesn't have a lot of money, I don't have a lot to give. But Jesus wasn't talking to only wealthy or important people in these stories. He was talking to ordinary people like you and me. No matter what we have, time, compassion, money, friendship, skills, Jesus says we can use it to show our love for God when we give passionately and willingly to others. It's not about them, it's about us. Sometimes when we talk about meeting others' needs, we talk as though we're the people with all the power, resources, or stuff to share, while people in need are a separate group of people. When we think this way, it's easy to see someone as if they're less valuable than we are, even while we're serving them. But do you remember the way that Jesus spoke to the blind man and the sick woman who needed his help? He treated them not just with compassion, but with respect. He made the crowds pay attention to them. Instead of speaking for them, he asked them to speak for themselves. Jesus didn't just give people charity, he gave people respect. And we can do that too. When we remember that it's not about us and the people who need us, there is only us. We're all equally loved, seen, and valued by God. So, how do we do this? How can we care for the people around us who are in need? Do we need to wait for a little girl to walk up to us in a restaurant? Do we need to ask God to help us heal the blind or the sick? How do we practically meet the needs of the people around us? Man, there are so many opportunities all around us because there are so many needs all around us. If we're paying attention, just like Jesus noticed the needs of Bartimaeus and the sick woman, what would it look like for you to notice a need and then respond in love? Here's one example, a quick video. Take a look.
These two students are showing how kindness can go a very long way.
The best day of my entire life was basically.
That is Michael Todd, a freshman at MLK Prep in Memphis, Tennessee. The two seen here, Christopher Graham and Antoine Garrett, made Todd's day.
Michael was getting made fun of for 3 straight weeks at his new school.
I've been bullied my entire life.
He would wear the same clothes every day, and students at MLK Prep would mock him for it.
That's right, bullied for wearing the same clothes to school each day. Seen in this video, Graham and Garrett gave him a quantitative gift: shoes, shirts, and much more. He wasn't smiling or anything, and I was like, I think this is going to make you smile. We're in the same third period, and I apologize for laughing at you, and I want to give you something to make it up, Graham said. According to WPXI, people from states away have seen the video and want to send Todd clothes.
Remember how we said that being in need makes someone vulnerable? And that sometimes people treat vulnerable people with cruelty? That's exactly what happened here. But then something else happened. Some of the same students who had been ignoring and mocking this boy realized that they had the ability to right their wrongs by meeting his needs. Instead of spending money on themselves, they spent it on clothes for their classmate who was vulnerable and in need. But the clothes were only part of what they gave him. These boys also gave him respect, compassion, and kindness. More than likely, they had to sacrifice something to meet those needs. Maybe it wasn't even money. Maybe it was popularity or a spot at a lunch table. These boys found a way to use what they had to meet someone's need. How might you do the same? Could you give a meal to someone who needs it? Share a meal or a chat with someone who's lonely? Stay after school to help someone study? Help a friend perfect their free throw before basketball tryouts? Maybe check in on someone who's going through a hard time? There are needs all around us. We just need to look for them. In Jesus' time, people in need were often canceled by society instead of helped. They were ignored, judged, or left to fend for themselves. And we still have that problem today, don't we? But if you want to love like Jesus loves, and I hope you do, love people who are in need. Because when you do, it's like you're doing it for Jesus himself. Thanks for listening to this message, everyone. Here are a couple more questions to talk about in your small groups. Talk about a time when someone loved you or when you were in need. Or, who is someone whose needs you can meet this week? What will you do about it? Go ahead and talk about it in your groups, and we'll see you back here next time. Bye, everyone.